Hello Reds, welcome along to All for United. There is nothing quite like hearing Karthik scream, "We're going to win the Champions League," before we talk to a former Red, because I know that would make you smile, Lou. Hello, welcome on to All for United. I'm thrilled today to be joined by a very special guest, former Red Lou Macari, very much still at the forefront of all things to do with United. Lou, thank you for taking the time to join me today. There's so much I want to talk about. I want to talk about progress made this season. I want to talk about, obviously, the Cup final as well a little bit, and what we need this summer to help us go even further next year. But first of all, I have to start by congratulating you and thanking you on behalf of so many people, really, for the work you're doing with the foundation, with the Macari Centre, what you've been doing to help homeless people, especially through lockdown, with your charity work. So please fill us in. What have recent months been like, and how is everything going from the charity side of things?
Well, we started off about 5 years ago, Ben, in a building that was very crammed, and we squeezed 46 people in there at the time. We've moved from that building into a massive warehouse. We put some pods in the warehouse, and I think now we've got about 49 people with us at the moment. As each year goes past, but to be honest with you, it gets tougher and tougher. There's new drugs come along, which I've got to be honest, send the people that I'm staying with crazy. They become a little bit out of control. We do our best to get them back on the right road to recovery. But it's a long, difficult struggle against drugs. I'm fortunate I've never been involved with drugs in my life, and I played at a time when drugs in football unheard of. Drugs in life were probably, well, very few people talked about drugs, but the main thing nowadays seems to be homeless people hooked on drugs, and it's difficult for them to get away from it.
Yeah, and some of the work you're doing, Lou, as well. I've seen some of the sheltered accommodation that you've set up during lockdown. How is the fundraising efforts going to keep all this happening, and how can people watching now, be able to donate, be able to potentially get involved?
We work with the City Council, who fund us looking after the people we've got in here. So on a week-to-week basis, on a month-to-month basis, we're well funded in that, Ben, and I don't really need to send out an appeal for any money, if I'm being honest. So it's just nice for people to be thinking about us, nice for people to recognise us, and as we are a football show, our recognition about 4 months ago came from FIFA. Now that I couldn't understand, because, as I don't need to tell you, they're in Switzerland, we're in Stoke-on-Trent. There's a massive distance between the two places, and somehow or other FIFA got to know about what we were doing, and came and took pictures and put things on their website, put us in a magazine. And ever since that recognition from FIFA, we've had, well, everybody, all the daily newspapers, Sunday newspapers, foreign radio stations, foreign TV stations, sort of all flocking to Stoke-on-Trent, which is quite a new thing, believe it or not. And they've all came here and taken their own pictures and had a look at what we've been doing. And just yesterday, Ben, I got a thank you from the Prime Minister, which
amazing.
I never thought. I've got it here, so I'll just comes in a nice letter Downing Street at the back.
Oh, wow.
So when you get it, you know it's from Downing Street. It's not a scam.
I was going to say, me commending you now, Lou, is nothing compared to that, is it?
It's
I mean, there's levels.
It all counts. And
it does.
And we've had help from the City Council. We've had help from everybody in Stoke. all the outlets, all the supermarkets, all the big restaurants. And without that support, we could never have got where we were 5 years ago to where we are today. It just wouldn't have happened. But it has happened. We're here now, and obviously we're here to stay.
Yeah, of course, and I think obviously 100% I have to commend, support the work that you're doing. If you're out there and you don't know much about the Macari Centre and the work that Lou Macari is doing, please go Google about it, read up about it. Please check it out and share it far and wide if you can do. And I think it goes to show people doing that, Lou, and you probably have had the support of United fans anyway on this project along the way. It just shows how fans can help reverb certain messaging around the world. We saw it obviously with completely different situation, the Super League, etc. And ultimately, we've all got a voice. If we use it to good will come. So fantastic work, Lou, you and the team. But as you said, of course, a football show. So I'm sure everyone's going to want to have your opinion on all matters Manchester United. So let's start with the Europa League final. Obviously, not the way we wanted to end the season, Lou. But can you see the progress that's being made?
Well, that's the one thing that all managers are looking for, Ben, is a bit of progress. Sometimes you're not in control of the results because the players do that, and a little bit of luck or a little bit of bad luck on the night. And I think in the final, it was just a case of when you get to penalties, it's anybody's who's going to make the first mistake. And unfortunately, we made the first mistake and didn't pick up the trophy. Progress, when you're in management, you can feel, and I'm sure Ollie's no different to any manager, you can feel you're making progress, and all of a sudden it comes to a halt for whatever unknown reason. But I think he'll be quite happy with the fact that certain individuals within the team improved throughout the season. The team itself improved a bit. Unfortunately, not enough for us to lift a trophy because City got well clear of us and we're possibly never going to catch them. But it'll be giving him, and I hope a lot of Manchester United supporters around the world, a bit more hope than we had at the start of last season. But you're judged on your results, Ben, and if Ollie produces the results, he'll be a hero. If he doesn't produce the results, then he knows as well as I do, and you know it, people will be calling for his head.
Yeah, I think you use Twitter as much as I do, Lou, and ultimately I think people already had their tweets written from the first minute to sort of hit Ollie with. And that's the problem. With such a big fan base, there's always going to be a big divide and split in fan opinion. But I just want to hit on one thing that you said that I found quite interesting. You mentioned obviously bad luck on the night. Obviously a big outpour after the game, and especially with some pundits as well. Plenty saying that squad should be good enough to create more, to beat Villarreal within 120 minutes. Is there any worry from you as a former player that you've seen some players out there potentially on the pitch? I'm not asking you to name names, but obviously if you want to, who didn't turn up in a big night in a European final. Is that a concern?
That always happens, Ben. In any big final, there's players from both sides that the pundits after the game look at and say, "Well, he just didn't deliver." That's the case with. It'll be the case in the European Championships. We'll be talking after every game about England, Scotland, and other players who didn't deliver on the night. Unfortunately, there was one or two that I thought were below the best. I thought Marcus on the night was below his best because he's been good all season. He's been improving. He's got to where he's got to because of what people have seen on the pitch. I just didn't think it went great for him on the night. It wasn't a sinker for him, but normally somebody like him comes up with the goods, and instead of losing on penalties, you win in 90 minutes or you win in 120 minutes. But that wasn't to be. One or two others didn't perform as well as they have been doing, but you can't get them performing every week. Bruno, when he's come in, none of us knew a great deal about him, and as soon as he hit the ground running at Manchester United, he was brilliant. He was the star man every week, and had we not signed him, we may not even have finished second, I think, if we hadn't signed him, because he pulled us out of a number of dark holes we were in and got a result for us and got another result for us with another performance. And as the season went on, it looked like the Bruno Fernandes season we were watching. So And you can always improve the team, and Ollie and his staff, I'm sure, will be locked in at Carrington and thinking long and hard where they're going to get players from, who those players are going to be. You and I see a million names mentioned. Majority of them are never going to come to Old Trafford. It's agent talk to hype up the desire for those players. It's other people talking about them. Certainly not the people at Old Trafford. So that's an interesting time as well, when we all sit down and think and wonder who maybe is joining us for the next season, where I think it's fair to say we've got to get it right. Ollie's got to get it right. He's got to win something, and Manchester United as a club have got to get it right, without a doubt.
Yeah, 100%. I actually want to come back. You mentioned earlier on Rashford. I definitely want to come back to that, and we will talk about the summer in just a second. But first of all, you mentioned Bruno Fernandes there, Lou. I mean, 58 games this season, 28 goals, 18 assists. But not just that, the eye test, how classy he is, how he flows around the pitch. How good is Bruno Fernandes, Lou?
I'd never heard of him. I've got to be honest. When they said we're going for Bruno Fernandes, I said, right, let's see what he's got to offer. When he played a couple of games, Ben, I thought, no, this can't continue, because these are two performances that are just the hallmark of a top European player. And why wasn't he signed by somebody else? And how come people missed him? So I was waiting for everything to change, but it never. It was the same week in, week out. From midfield, he was getting goals, he got forward, and if he didn't get a goal, he was getting into the box. It was always dangerous. Something we didn't have a great deal of at Old Trafford in the 12 months before it. Dangerous players from midfield, probably the most dangerous. But Jesse Lingard was probably our most dangerous player from midfield and getting goals, but his form deteriorated, and of course he didn't get a game, and Ollie let him go to West Ham. Then all of a sudden, I've got to mention him, because all of a sudden there was a performance, not for us, but for West Ham. There was a performance week in, week out that was quite incredible. So I think those two midfield players have been the two big talking points of our season, the form of Fernandes and, unfortunately, the form of Jesse when he went to West Ham, not the form of Jesse when he was at Old Trafford.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good points. And also, as I want to come back to maybe the Euro slightly towards the end if we've got some time, Lou, because I know it's worth chatting about, obviously, Lingard's omission as well, and a few other decisions in there. But Marcus, I wanted to hit on this quickly. As a former professional yourself, I always like to pick brains of former pros. I was slightly worried with Marcus. I know players play with niggles, but Marcus came out after the game talking about the injuries that he's been carrying throughout the whole season. I know you played in a different era, but is it a worry that at such a young age still, Rashford, and I always use the Michael Owen test. We all know how Owen used to play through injury. Again, I know it's a different time, but how that affected his career towards the end. And even at a young age still, at 28, 29, 30. Is it a worry that he's been playing with these, I wouldn't even say niggles, injuries through the pain barrier since September?
Yeah, got to be honest with you, Ben. I expected a little dip in form from Marcus, because probably no need to tell you, he got involved in a lot of work with children and the kids and looking after them. And I just thought, that's time consuming. I can tell you now that me looking after 47 people here is very easy. The phone's ringing all day. You've got problems with the people here all day. I'm not saying it's the same for Marcus, because he's dealing with different age group, but that phone ringing all the time and people want to speak to him and travelling down to London for various things, meeting the Prime Minister, meeting somebody else, all things that Sir Alex wouldn't have allowed to go on. But, when it's for somebody like Marcus, who's doing a great job for the youngsters nowadays, you've got to fulfil these commitments. And I just thought, sooner or later, that will tell on him. The pressure of being not just Marcus Rashford, the footballer, but Marcus Rashford, the man who's going about helping the youngsters of today, that will take its toll on him. And that dip in form hasn't really come to until maybe the end of the season. But unfortunately for us in that final, I just thought he was below his big standard that he set. And that standard that he set, he's going to have to up his game now, week in, week out, to be the same Marcus Rashford as we've seen, being absolutely brilliant for the team and the club.
You also wonder where he's going to find time to have rest over the summer, because the league season starts so early. They were saying the other day that some teams, potentially, if clubs go to the final in the Euros, you've got maybe 10 days of training before the start of the season. How does that impact a player, Lou?
I think Gareth Southgate will be well aware of that, Ben. He's going to games every week. I'm sure you've seen him getting to the Old Trafford some weeks and taking a check on the Manchester United boys. So he'll bear that in mind, and when he comes to pick any team in the Euros, he'll be bearing in mind, I'm sure, the long, difficult season some players have had for whatever reason, and picking his freshest, strongest, and his best available England team to go out there and play in the game. So I don't think I think Marcus is in safe hands with the England manager, because he's a guy that's played football. He's been an England manager for a while now, and he'll know the demands that are put on the modern day footballer.
How does the dream of Scott McTominay for Scotland lifting the Euros trophy sound to you, Lou?
That is a dream, by the way. I'm quite confident, Ben. I'm just hoping to do well. That's an achievement for us, to do well. It's been a long time since we've been at a final. And of course, for young Scott, the 12 months, 18 months, whatever you want to call it, has been almost as incredible as Marcus Rashford and Bruno and other players that have come on the scene and done fantastic. He'll be wanting Scotland to do well, obviously. He'll be wanting to do well himself. Chance to showcase yourself and your ability on the European stage, and he's capable of doing that. Scott McTominay's developed into a big. I only realised that when I stood against him one day at Old Trafford. A huge, let's say, midfield player compared to me in size.
Can I just quickly say, Lou, because I know that you've spent, obviously, over the time, and especially when Scott McTominay was emerging, a lot of time around the team, like and obviously doing what you have done in the past for United, and I assume continue doing now. But can you talk to us a little bit about witnessing that growth spurt? Because he really didn't he, go from this not small but quite standardly sized lad to being the only word I can use is a unit, a giant.
Giant, yeah. Because nowadays, when you see the teams lined up in the tunnel, Ben, before the game, they're all huge. When the camera zooms in on them and you get a close-up, it gives supporters who have never met these players, gives them a little bit of an insight to how tall and muscular that they are. But when you're actually standing against them, you realise it. You realise that even more. And Scott McTominay was, I wouldn't say was ever a big midfield player when I saw him, but he wasn't what he's developed into now. He is 6 foot plus. He's got the build of, wouldn't say a wrestler, but a boxer, let's say. He's got the build of a boxer, and he's capable of getting about that midfield quite easily. He's got plenty of energy, and those are all the hallmarks that are needed for any midfield player. He's upped his game. He's improved his game. Long may it continue, because these are things that you hope to see in any young player, and you hope to see them develop, and he's doing that at this moment in time. He's now up against Europe's finest in the coming weeks. Interesting to see how he does there.
I mean, if he carries his performance from the Europa League final into the Euros, then he can definitely be a big player in that Scotland side, of course, as he already is. Can I also just hit on a point that you mentioned? And sorry, I said it would be about 20 minutes. Got so much to ask you, Lou. I remember going one of my first United games that I went and saw in the early noughties. And I remember seeing Roy Keane, Giggs, Scholes, and obviously these are giants of players who I'd never seen in real life before, and looking at them going, they're like normal sized people. Like they're not, and you saying there that now if you look in the tunnel, like the majority of players are now giants. It's true. Like if you have a look at the evolution of the footballer, so to speak, they are now probably a couple of inches to over 6 foot on average, whereas before, even at the early 2000s, probably 5'8" was around the average size of a footballer. So
size didn't matter.
Yeah,
size didn't matter then.
It still doesn't really if you've got the ability, but I suppose it all helps.
It all helps now because we did have some big players. Big Jim Holton, as you know, was huge, but he doesn't compare to the guy at Chelsea with the mask on. When you get a close up of, is it Rudiger?
Rudiger, yeah, Rudiger.
When you get a close up of him, he is massive. He is. He's just, and he's proved on the pitch that one manager overlooking him, which was Frank Lampard. Frank overlooked him and he hardly played. New managers come in and taking the view that he's going to be the rock of my defence. He's going to be the main man there. And the young man, I'm sure he's a young man, but he looks an older man. I'm sure he's never looked back since the new Chelsea managers come in and showed a great deal of faith in him. So it used to be all about any size player, but nowadays it seems to be it does help if you're six plus.
Yeah, of course. And you mentioned there about Chelsea. Obviously, Chelsea ending the season in the best way that potentially they could with winning that cup final. Obviously, City, we know, are a force, and we're reading rumours about them switching things up in the window. Liverpool doing business early. Bit quiet at the moment on the front of United things. We're still hearing Sancho talk. Right. So what do United need to do this summer, Lou? To, not just compete, I suppose, against City, but to continue batting off Liverpool, Chelsea, Leicester, maybe even a Conte Spurs?
Well, to win football matches, Ben, you need goal scorers. And if you've got goal scorers up front, that's a big help. If you've got a couple in midfield, that's even better. If you've got one or two at the back that don't mind venturing forward and throwing a few more goals into the hat, even better still. But probably until Bruno arrived, we probably didn't have enough goal scoring assets in the midfield area. Chelsea, I watched Chelsea most of the season, and they brought in a couple of the German lads up front, and people were criticising their ability to get goals. But what I took note of it was the fact that I felt both of them had the knack of getting in there, but maybe not the knack of finishing. And but if you've got that, if you've got a couple of players that when they get in that box have got the knack, but it just doesn't happen sometimes for them, which didn't happen for those two until towards the end of the season when they both got one or two goals that were important goals. If you've got enough of those players in your team, then you'll be up the top of the league, or you'll be winning a cup, you'll be winning a trophy. So I do think lots of people will think lots of things are needed at Old Trafford, but I do think one of the main things is another goal-scoring midfield player whose intention is getting in the box, getting the odd goal or two. Doesn't need to be a great goal, getting the odd goal or two that wins you games and then sends you up that league table and gets you into the next round of any cup competition. And Bruno has proved that there are those players in Europe. It's up to the staff and the manager to go and find them.
Have you seen enough of Sancho to think if he is that guy?
Takes a certain guy I have always believed to be able to play at Old Trafford and come from a club and get better at Old Trafford than he's been at that club. I'm not, I've got to be honest with you, I'm not head over heels and thinking he's going to be our solution, because I don't believe that, Ben. But if we can find another one that none of us have heard about, like a Bruno, then that'll be the guy. We talk about settling in at Old Trafford, and we talk about giving people time. He didn't need any time. He got off the plane at Manchester Airport, went to Old Trafford, signed the forms, became a Man United player, and within the space of a couple of days was showing us all what we've got, and nothing's changed since then. So I do believe that there are players out there. Bruno's proved that, and it's up to everyone to staff at Old Trafford, as I said, to go and find them.
We've given, obviously, Cavani an extension. I've got two more questions for you, I promise. We've obviously given Cavani an extension, but also we know Harry Kane has come out and said that he wants to leave Spurs potentially, or whispers of. one thing that resonates with me when asking this question or thinking about asking this question to you was what you said earlier on about stuff that Sir Alex Ferguson would never have let happen. And ultimately, Sir Alex Ferguson would never let Harry Kane this summer go to anyone else but Manchester United, would he? So in terms of Harry Kane being on the market, should he, you spoke about goal scorers, be United's first target?
I'm sure they've got targets up front, Ben, and he would be my first target because he's making enough noises to tell you that he's putting enough pressure on Spurs to not be able to keep him. Simple as that. And that's part of the transfer game where the agents get their players to speak out and say things that they normally wouldn't speak out and say and do. So it's quite obvious Harry Kane is going to leave Tottenham, and if he's going to leave, there's no reason that Manchester United shouldn't be in there for him. He's a goal scorer. And I've had a little insight to Harry Kane is Joe Jordan, who I work with in management. Joe was with him at Spurs, and I asked Joe what he was like, and the first thing he said, that excited me. He said he's a nice lad. That excites me, Ben. If I know you're getting nice people and nice footballers, you're halfway there. You don't want the ones that are going to be kicking off every week, opening their gob and saying this and saying that and making excuses. Harry Kane's a good character. That would be my first reason. And it'd be good enough reason for me to go and get him. If I was in management now, whether it be at Old Trafford or anywhere, and I had the money, but unfortunately there's lots of teams got the money now, and Man City and I read Chelsea are interested, and even Arsenal saying that they could be interested. So that everyone's up their game in terms of the financial side of it. Everyone's after the top players. And Harry Kane, I'm sure, he is in demand. He will be in demand. You just mentioned somebody else there, Ben, that Cavani. Now, I wish he was a few years younger, because had he been a few years younger, they'd have signed him up on a long contract, because he showed us he's one of those centre-forwards who have got the knack, not always scoring, but have got the knack of being in the right place at the right time. Even after being in the right place at the right time, you can still miss the target. But you get that feeling with him that when he goes into the box, it's like a magnet. That ball's attracted to him, and he gets himself into the near post, back post, and he's a threat. And I've been pleasantly surprised what he did for us. But unfortunately, the future is times against him, and we never know when the sort of wheels may come off and the legs start to get a little bit slower. Yeah. But had it not been that, I'm sure the club would have tied him into a long contract.
No, definitely. But as you mentioned, if you've got the opportunity to add someone who ticks the boxes like Kane to your squad, I don't think you think twice, do you? Especially then if you're stopping him from going to one of your rivals. Lou, final question for me: are there any other players out there, whether it's left field or someone who potentially you've looked at that you'd love to see, who you think could come into United and make a difference next season?
No, nobody else really, Ben. It's just that you pounce Harry Kane, and I'm agreeing with you. There is obviously, when you finish so many points behind City and you don't win anything, I'm sure management are aware we need fresh blood. That fresh blood has got to add something to the team, and not just bringing people in, to add to numbers, because that doesn't work. And it's a bit of an exciting time, and maybe because there was no trophies, maybe that everyone will start to realise it to get some trophies back to Old Trafford. You need to spend a few quid. You need to go and take one or two chances, and that will be. I'm sure that will be the view that Ollie's taking when he sits down with the owners and the people that run Manchester United. That he'll state the obvious. Look, that's what we did. That's where we got to. Wasn't good enough. He might even blame himself that I'm obviously partly to blame for that. So I need a little bit of help from everybody. He knows he'll get the help from the supporters. Even those that are a little bit of doubt about Ollie, they'll still be hoping that he delivers and he does it. Because, again, he's another one of those nice guys. People say to me, sometimes nice guys don't win anything. That's true as well. But let's give him the chance of doing something. And that means that the club giving them a fair amount of money to go and improve the team, supporters getting behind them, and we all get back to Old Trafford, 75,000 that is, not 2,222 or whatever it was.
Cannot wait.
It does. We need the supporters back to create that atmosphere that over the years, in my time at Old Trafford, and if you speak to any ex-Manchester United player, will tell you the atmosphere that's generated, the support that's generated in the stadium goes a long, long way to helping you win the matches, and it goes a long, long way to pushing you up league tables and getting into the final of cup competitions. And without it, it's crap, Ben, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It really is. It really is. Yeah, 100%.
Football with no supporters there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not the same, is it? And I can't imagine how that plays on the footballers' minds as well. But look, no, we'll leave it there. Actually, I just want to hit on one thing that you mentioned to do with Ollie there and sort of the support. I think that's what broke my heart completely after the Europa League final. Is that all day, all I was envisioning, like I had tunnel vision. Ollie lifting that trophy. That's all I could see in my head. That's all I wanted at the end of that game. I didn't care what the performance was going to be like. And immediately afterwards, we did like a show, and I couldn't talk because I was literally heartbroken, because that's what I wanted to see. That's what I want to see. Anyone nowadays within the public eye will get criticism and will get critiqued. It's just living life in the public eye now. So it's natural, but criticism doesn't mean that you have to always totally overshadow the negatives on a human being or a person or the job they're doing. Ultimately, there's a bigger picture, and still for me, that passion and ambition is there, even with the bad end of the season. I so want to see Ollie lift the trophy. I'm desperate to see it, and I hope he gets backed, and I hope we get what we need to make that a reality next season, because, as you said, the guy lives and breathes United, and he ultimately is just such a lovely guy as well. I mean, lovely guys don't always work within certain jobs, within certain fields, but ultimately he needs to be given the opportunity to work. Let's hope that that's what happens this summer. Lou, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate your time, Lou Macari. And hopefully, if we can do it again this summer, let's do it again. I've got so many more questions I want to ask you about your playing days and bits and pieces like that, but I'm sure we can organise that another time. Lou, thank you, and thank you guys for watching. Subscribe to All for United for more content like this, and we shall be back soon. Stay safe, everyone.